Hello, I'm Matt and welcome to Badger Workshop. As you can see, I could use a place to hang my coat. So I'm going to make some coat racks. I'm going to make one for myself and a few more so I can sell them. I've got this bit of pine which I can make some out of and paint it, and I've got some oak which I'm just going to keep natural. I bought the pine planed all round. The oak is rough sawn. It's a lot cheaper that way, but it means you need to do a bit more work. So I'm going to cut this bit of oak down to some more manageable size pieces. I want to make the racks around the size of the pine so I don't have to cut it down at all. So I need to get this oak down to the same size as the pine. So first I'm going to clean up one surface on the planer. With one surface done, I can then get the edge squared up. Now I've got two flat surfaces, I can set the table saw up to rip it down. So I measure the pine boards and set the fence to the same width. I can now get these bits of oak ripped down to the same width as the pine. The other rough edge just gets ripped off and thrown on the wood pile, but it still leaves one rough surface at the top. Now I could put it through the thicknesser to clean it up and bring it down to its final dimension, but there's quite a bit of wood left on this, so now I've got the capacity of a 12-inch saw. I'm going to re-saw this. Time for a bit of slow-mo. Right, enough messing around, back to work. I can now get some stop blocks set up on the miter saw and get the pine and the oak cut down to the dimensions I want the racks to be. With it all cut down, I'm left with 3 piles of wood, a couple of coat racks and then some simple ones as well. So they're going to go together like this. They're going to have a top with a little support, a bit for the hooks to go on, and a couple of sides. But that's not a very interesting shape, so we need to add some nice curves. I'm just going to use a speed square to mark out where I want the curves to start and stop. Then I went through my paint can collection to find one with a radius I liked that I could draw around. I'm just going to draw around it from both sides to get like a sweeping S-curve type shape. I just scribble out the bit that's waste and hopefully you'll see what I mean. I can get this cut out on the bandsaw. To start with, I'm only cutting one out because I don't want to have to go through that palaver of drawing it out each time. I just want to get this one cut out and then use it as a template. I can now draw around the first one onto the other bit of pine and onto the bits of oak and then get them all cut out. I'm trying to cut these pieces out right on my line, but they always need a bit of sanding, so I set up the bobbin sander to clean them up. This is one of those one-trick pony tools that I thought I'd never need, but now I have one, it is so useful for doing curves. Now the sides of the units have nice curves to them, I want the top and some of the other bits to look a bit more interesting, so I'm going to put this little profile cutter into the router. I can then get it mounted in the table and put a little profile on the edge. Go on then, one more bit of slow-mo, but I promise this is the last one. Right, I'm going to stop messing around and get on with this. I've got an old sanding disc that I'm going to put around a foam pad just to sand down these profiles a little. Then I can get the rest of the bits sanded with the random orbital sander, going up the grits just to 120. I can now start getting the pine rack put together. I get it laid out and then I can mark out where I want some holes to go. As this rack is going to get painted, I'm just going to screw it together and plug the holes. I set up the countersinking bit in the drill press and get all the holes drilled out. This leaves a 10mm hole that can then be plugged later on. I'll put a link down below to where you can get one of these countersinking and plugging kits. These are some 3.5 times 40 screws. I get some PVA wood glue on the joints and then I can get it all screwed together. Here you can see I'm using a standard screwdriver bit, but the longer ones are much better to get into these countersunk holes. I get the top put in place and get it so it overhangs the same amount both ends, and then I can use a speed square just to mark out where the holes are going to need to go to attach it to the sides. I take it to the drill press, get these holes drilled out, and then get it screwed and glued in place the same as before. Now I've got it all put together, I need to hide all those ugly holes, so I swap out the bits in the drill to the plug cutting bit. You can just use a screwdriver to pop these out, and I often do, but if you've got a lot to do, running it through the bandsaw is a bit quicker and does a slightly neater job. All the holes now just get a dab of PVA glue in, and then a plug can be put in and tapped down into place. When the glue's dried, these plugs can then be cut flush with the surface. I like to use a little Japanese pool saw for doing this. So as this is going to get painted, I'm going to go around with some filler and fill any small imperfections. This needs a way to mount it to the wall, so I'm going to use these little brass inserts. So I'm just marking out where they need to go, and then I can drill a shallow hole for them. I will install them later, I just want to get these holes drilled before painting. Now I can give it another sand down to smooth off all that filler. First I'm going to get the rack painted with a coat of acrylic undercoat. And when that's dry, well, don't worry, I won't make you watch that bit happening. I get it painted in a Farrow and Ball colour called Hue Blue. I give it a couple of coats, and while I'm waiting for it to dry, I get on with putting the oak rack put together. So the oak rack is exactly the same, but as it's not going to be painted, I don't want to put it together with screws. Well, I could do, and the plugs would probably look okay, but I'm going to use dowels and use this jig. It goes over the bit of wood, tightens down onto it, and then it self-centres. These little bushings could be changed out. I've got 8mm in there at the moment, but you could use 6 or 10. I get the first bit of wood clamped down in the vise, and then I can get the jig positioned onto it. It's got this adjustable stop, so I'm going to set it to its minimum depth. I use that Triton doweler all the time, but I'm not very happy with the accuracy of it, so I've had this jig a while and thought it was about time I gave it a go. I set up a collar on a drill bit, and now I can drill down to the desired depth. I'm going to go down 20mm deep. With the first hole drilled, I just drill down into the second bushing to make 2 holes in the end of the wood. I'll put a link down below to this jig as well if you want to have a look at it. To mark out where the corresponding holes need to go, I've got these little centre pins that I'm going to pop in the holes I've drilled. Well, you just have to take my word for it I did that, because I might have got it slightly out of frame. So with them in the holes, I can line up where it needs to go and push these bits of wood together. Now you should be able to see a couple of little indentations. I get this done for all the joints. Now with an 8mm drill bit, I can drill out these holes. I'm going to go all the way through, so all the joinery is actually going to be exposed. but you could as easily not drill it all the way through and have the dowels hidden. I've got some oak dowel, but it needs cutting down into usable pieces, so I just do this on the bandsaw. Now I can get this rack put together. So I get a bit of glue on all the joints and in the holes, then I can get the dowels tapped into place. The joints can then be pushed together. These smooth dowels are a bit harder to use than those ones with grooves in you buy in packets. And they needed a bit of persuasion, so I warn you the next shot is a bit disturbing. I seem to look really angry here doing this. Maybe I'd not had a cup of tea yet that morning. After I'd calmed down and got it all together, I could then let the glue dry. Then the excess bits of dowel could be trimmed off exactly the same as the plugs. I want the racks to have different hanging options, and one of those is going to be shaker style pegs. I'm going to paint some of them so I get some undercoat on a few. Then, for some reason, I turn the lights out and get some blue on. I stick them on top of a few nails so they can dry. Now I can start getting these racks finished, so I'll start with the painted one. I get a dab of CA glue in those little holes I drilled, and then the brass inserts can be put in and tapped down into place. I have these black wire hangers to go on this rack, and I'm going to mount 4 of them to it. I get them positioned and then evenly spaced. I use a self-centering drill bit to drill out the holes for the screws. And these did come with some black screws, but I want to make more of a feature out of them, so I've got some little brass screws I'm going to use instead. These will be down below on my tool page under hardware if you want to have a look at these hooks. For the oak racks, I want to use the shaker pegs, so I mark out equal positioning for them. Then I can take them over to the drill press and get these holes drilled out. While I'm at the drill, I also drill some holes for those little brass inserts to go as well. I start with getting those inserts put in place, so just some CA glue in the holes again, and then they get put in and tapped down. The shaker pegs I painted were made of ash, but I also got some oak ones. These are what I'm going to fit to the first rack, so I get a little dab of PVA wood glue in each of the holes. The pegs get put into the hole and then tapped down into place, and they're a really nice snug fit. Now what I forgot to do on this first one was to protect the head of the peg. On subsequent ones I put a scrap of leather over, and that helped protect it as I tapped it in place. And this was even more important on the ones that I painted. To finish with the oak racks, I'm just going for my trusty old finish of some Danish oil. For the all oak rack, I get the rack and the shaker pegs finished with it. For the other ones, I just brush it around the painted pegs. And that's them all done, so I've finally got somewhere to hang my coat up, and a few left over to sell. I also made some mini little ones to put keys on, some painted in a little off-white, and then the other ones. Thanks for watching, thanks to my Patreons, and please subscribe for more videos.